Hello, so this is the developer commentary for Anna Hardy, explaining how I contributed to the project of Poultergeist. So unfortunately, the Python script I wrote for this animation is no more. I think it might have gotten deleted when I uninstalled an old version of Maya or something, and I did not have a backup. But I can basically describe what I did here. And so basically what I did is I have this naming convention where I put animate in front of the body part name, and so the script would go through, search for everything that had animate and put that in an array. And then after it put that in the array, it would go through that array for each body part and have a nested for loop, one for loop for each body part and then another for loop for each frame for each body part. And it would basically check to see, using the modulus operation, to see, like, every 20 frames, let's say, we will key the neck going up one, and then the next 20 frames will key it going down one, and there was a boolean that would switch between the negative and the positive. And then after it was done with one body part, it would add maybe one to that offset, so from 5 to 6 every 6 frames. And so then you get like this really cool like discombobulated effect where nothing is like moving at exactly the same time. But then in order to make it loop better, it does all come down to the end. If I were doing this again, I think I'd make the part where they all come back together, back to the starting position, happen a little bit faster, like maybe right here. And I did do that with the other animations, because the whole reason I automated this process was because I already had the other chicken animations when I had this idea for this ghostly moving effect. So this helped that happen for all of the animations in a relatively smooth manner. And speaking of animations, I'm not really an animator, so I did not realize that I would have to have a skeleton in order for this to work with Unreal State Machine. So basically, I kind of did a little impromptu state machine of my own. So I have all of these functions here that set the skeletal mesh for each body part. So it starts off in an idle phase, but then, if it gets the signal to play the tracing emotion, then it will set the skeletal mesh for all the body parts, and then it will set the material, because for some reason the default material coming in wasn't the material I wanted, and then it will set the animation and then play the animation. And basically, I didn't really write the code for the chicken AI, that was mostly David, but what I did do is I added this variable in here, last state played, and basically what it would do, because one of the problems I was having is if I just, like, okay, it's idle, now I want it to play the idle animation. If I just did that with no checks, then basically it would just continuously repeat the idle animation. So I had to have the string in here. So like, for example, last state patrol, which is what he was calling the idle animation. And so if that had not been set to patrol most recently, then it would play it, but if it had been set to patrol, then it would not hit the play function. And that was all pretty well and good, except for the seed, because there was a lot of miscommunication or maybe misunderstanding about what exactly was wanted from the seed. So basically there wasn't a good way to detect how long the chicken was supposed to be distracted by the seed, how long the pecking animation should be playing. So I actually, oops, my bad. So I actually programmed that into the first person player. Sorry. I totally forgot the code was over here. Yeah, so basically we have this function, and all it does is it sets a player being, oh, sorry, this was actually for the player being attacked animation. So yeah, this just sets the player being attacked animation to false. And so the reason why we have that happening is we have a function timer, and I'm doing it over here. Yeah, so you set the function timer so that way it only has the time for player being attacked. Yeah, you can see. That only happens every so often, because obviously you don't want to have the player constantly taking damage, because then you'll have the damage depleting. So there's lots of different detections that need to go on with that. And sorry, I just remembered that the first person character doesn't have that going on for the seed, but I did do something similar for the seed. Yeah, as you can see here, we have a similar function by timer solution for the seed. So that was my contribution to basically making this state machine. I was wanting to do a state machine that also had these transitions, but that became a bit much and too cumbersome for the time frame we had. As you can see, I was going to use a switch here. And the other major contribution has to do with the modeling. Nathan did a lot of the smaller environment models, but I did all of the big ones. So here you can see, I know it doesn't look too pretty in Maya because it's mad about those faces being so close to each other, but they're actually fine. They're not actually Z fighting. And what I originally had was I had just one polygon to like build this whole structure, and then I had it inverted inward. But the problem with that, if there's no thickness, the light just passes right through it in Unreal. So we couldn't get like the dark spooky lighting we wanted. So I had to pretty much completely redo it at that point. But I had learned a lot of valuable lessons from the first time, and also what I did to like make sure that they were perfectly together is I would typically join the different meshes, but then separate or then extract them afterwards, because you don't want to have everything combined, because then that makes it hard to get a lot of detail in the UVs. But you need to make sure that they are essentially joined, because otherwise light seeps through and then you still have the lighting issues. And then I did the textures and substance. I'm not totally happy with them. I wish I had more time to mess with them. This is a version with the door not textured, sorry. But as you can see, there's like little blood splatters everywhere, and yeah, this is an old version. I'm sorry about that, guys, but this stuff is textured, as you can see in the final version. I think, oh, I see what happened. Yeah, this version doesn't have the substance plugin, so that's why some of the textures aren't showing up, because I actually didn't make the textures for the smaller things. I downloaded them from Substance Share, but the textures for the building itself I totally handmade. And another thing I did was I did the initial level block out, the initial gray box. So basically I had this idea for, this room you would learn how to kill the chicken. As you can see, that chicken comes flying right at you. This room you would learn how to free the chicken. You have to go up and get the holy book to free that chicken, because we made it impossible to kill. And you can't advance without doing that. Then you go through the hallway, and in this room you learn about enraged chickens, which cannot be killed. You can only distract them. So basically, it would teach you about the 3 different ways to deal with chickens. And then in this room, which isn't explored too much by our trailer because not everything was completely finished for this room, we had this turnstile here that would basically serve as a way to, like, make you feel claustrophobic and deal with your field of vision, is actually how chickens are really slaughtered, because it's considered humane, so that they don't really know what they're getting into. So we found that pretty interesting, so we thought to incorporate it in the level design. And then, it had all these boxes that would lead the player over here, and then, like I said, this room was completely done, so there would be a door here. You'd come down, oops. You'd come down, the door would be locked, so you'd have to come down this ladder and come here into the freezer, which is not lit at all, and it would basically, you'd see like all the frozen chickens there, and you'd be kind of forced to contemplate the morality and kind of like of your destruction in kind of like a weird little way, because you'd see ghost chickens that were all shivering and cold. So still trying to keep the humor up, but also like, adding a little bit of commentary in there too. And then through there you would get the key to the main door, and then you'd be able to advance to the next level. So I basically like structured out that level design of trying to guide the player with the boxes, and also creating like these blind spots for them and creating different places for chickens to jump out of them. And also kind of create a little bit of a narrative in there. And I do hope to finish that narrative and make it fully realized just for my own sake and for my portfolio with Nathan and everything. But based on the time we had, I'm pretty happy with everything we got accomplished. I hope you found this dev commentary insightful. Have a great summer.